Welcome to part 2 of the Jeffrey Dahmer video. Jeffrey Dahmer purchased a Polaroid camera with which he took several pictures of Smith's body in suggestive positions before dismembering him in the bathroom. Dahmer dissolved the remainder of Smith's skeleton, excluding the skull, in a container filled with acid. He later spray painted Smith's skull, which he placed alongside the skull of Sears inside a filing cabinet. Approximately 1 week after the murder of Smith, Jeffrey Dahmer lured another young man to his apartment. On this occasion, Dahmer accidentally consumed a drink laden with sedatives intended for his guests. When he awoke, the following day, he discovered the man had stolen several items of clothing, $300 and a watch. Jeffrey never reported this to the police. In June 1990, Jeffrey Dahmer lured a 27-year-old Edward Smith to his apartment, where he had drugged and strangled him. He placed Smith's skeleton in the freezer for several months in the hope it would not retain moisture. It did not work. He accidentally destroyed the skull when he placed it in the oven to dry. He later informed police he had felt rotten about Smith's murder, as he had been unable to retain any parts of the body. Jeffrey Dahmer's next victim was Edward. Met him outside a bookstore. Miller agreed to accompany Dahmer to his apartment for $50 and further agreed to allow him to listen to his heartbeat and stomach. When Dahmer attempted to perform sex upon Miller, he was informed that'll cost you extra. Whereupon, Dahmer gave Miller a drink laced with 2 sleeping pills. He killed Miller by slashing his carotid artery with the same knife he used to dissect his victims' bodies. Dahmer then posed the nude body for various suggested Polaroid photographs before placing it in his bathtub for dismemberment. He repeatedly kissed and talked to the severed head. Well, he dismembered the remainder of the body. Jeffrey Dahmer wrapped Miller's heart, liver, biceps, and portions of flesh from the legs in plastic bags and placed them in the freezer for later consumption. David Thomas was the next victim. Jeffrey persuaded him to return to his apartment for a few drinks, with additional money on offer, if he would pose for photographs. After giving Thomas a drink laden with sedatives, he did not feel attracted to him, but was afraid to allow him to awaken, fearing they would be angry over having been drugged. Therefore, he strangled him and dismembered the body. Intentionally retaining no body parts whatsoever, he photographed the dismembered process and retained those photos, which later aided in Thomas' identification. Following the murder of Thomas, Jeffrey did not kill anyone for almost 5 months. He regularly complained of feeling both anxiety and depression to his probation officer throughout the 1990s. In February 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer observed a 17-year-old named Curtis Straughter standing at a bus stop. He lured Straughter into his apartment with an offer of money for posing for nude photos. With the aided incentive of sexual intercourse, Dahmer drugged Straughter, cuffed his hands behind his back, then strangled him to death with a leather strap. He then dismembered Straughter, retaining his skull, hands, and genitals, and photographing each stage of the process. Less than 2 months later, Jeffrey Dahmer encountered a 19-year-old named Errol Lindsay. Dahmer lured Lindsay to his apartment, where he drugged him, then drilled a hole in his skull, through which he injected hydrochloric acid with a blaster. Lindsay awoke after his experiment, saying, "I have a headache. What time is it?" In response to this, Dahmer again drugged Lindsay, then strangled him. He decapitated Lindsay and retained his skull. By 1991, fellow residents of the Oxford apartments had repeatedly complained to the building's manager of the foul smells emanating from apartment 213, in addition to the sounds of falling objects and the occasional sound of a chainsaw. Princewell contacted Dahmer in response to his complaints on several occasions, although he initially accused the odour emanating from his apartment as being caused by his freezer break-in, causing the contents to become spoiled. On later occasions, he informed Princewell that the reason for the residents of the odour was that several of his tropical fish had recently died, and they would take care of the matter. On May 24th, 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer encountered 31-year-old aspiring model Tony Hughes at a nightclub. He was lured to Dahmer's apartment with an offer of money to pose for photographs. Hughes was drugged into unconsciousness before Dahmer injected hydraulic acid into his skull in an effort to disable his will and render him submissive, although on this occasion, the drilling and injection proved fatal. On the afternoon of May 26, 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer encountered a 14-year-old Leo teenager Konarak on Wisconsin Avenue. Unknown to Dahmer, Konarak was the younger brother of the boy he had molested in 1988. Jeffrey offered Konarak money to accompany him to his apartment to pose for pictures, where he posed for 2 pictures in his underwear before Dahmer drugged him into unconsciousness and performed oral sex on him. On this occasion, Dahmer drilled a single narrow hole into the crown of Konarak's skull, through which he injected hydraulic acid into the frontal lobe. In the early morning hours of May 27th, Dahmer returned toward his apartment to discover Konarak sitting naked on the corner of 25th and State, with 3 distressed young women standing near him. Dahmer approached the women and told them that Konarak, whom he referred to by their alias John Hamon, was his friend. He attempted to lead him to his apartment by the arm. The 3 women deserted Dahmer, explaining they had phoned 911. On the arrival of 2 Milwaukee police officers, John Bazazak and Joseph Gabrish, Dahmer's demeanor relaxed. He told the officers that Konarak was his 19-year-old boyfriend. They had drunk too much following their quarrel, and that he frequently behaved in this manner. 3 women were exasperated, and when one of the trio attempted to indicate to one of the officers Konarak had blood upon his testicles, was bleeding from his rectum, and that he had seemingly struggled against Dahmer's attempts to walk him to his apartment. Prior to their arrival, the officer harshly informed her to butt out, shut the hell up, and to not interfere. Officer Richard Perebcom arrived to the scene inside his apartment, and in an effort to verify his claim that he and Konarak were lovers, Jeffrey Dahmer showed the officers 2 semi-nude Polaroid pictures he had taken the previous evening. Upon the departure of the 3 officers from his apartment, Dahmer again injected hydraulic acid into Konarak's brain. This second injection proved fatal. The following day, May 28th, Dahmer to dismemberment of the body of Konarak and Hughes, who retained both victims' skulls. 5 days later, on July the 5th, Dahmer lured 23-year-old Jeremiah Weinberger to his apartment on a promise of spending the weekend with him. He drugged Weinberger and twice injected boiling water through his skull, sending him into a coma, from which he died 2 days later. On July the 15th, Dahmer encountered 24-year-old Oliver Lacey. Lacey agreed to Dahmer's ruse of posing nude for photographs and accompanied him to his apartment, where the pair engaged in intensive sexual activity before Dahmer drugged Lacey. After strangling Lacey, Dahmer had sex with the corpse before dismembering him. He placed Lacey's head and heart in a refrigerator and his skeleton in the freezer. Jeffrey Dahmer then lured 25-year-old Joseph Bradshaw to his apartment. Greathoft was strangled and left lying on Dahmer's bed, covered with a sheet for 2 days. On July 21st, Dahmer removed the sheet to find the head covered in maggots. He then decapitated the body, cleaned the head, and placed it in the refrigerator. Tracy Edwards agreed to accompany him to his apartment. Upon entering Dahmer's apartment, Edwards noted a foul smell and several boxes of hydraulic acid on the floor which Dahmer claimed to use to clean bricks. After some minor conversations, Edwards responded to Dahmer's request to turn his head and view the tropical fish, whereupon Jeffrey Dahmer placed a handcuff upon his wrist. When Edwards asked what's happening, Jeffrey unsuccessfully attempted to cuff his wrists together, then told Edwards to accompany him to the bedroom to pose for the nude pictures. Jeffrey then brandished a knife and informed Edwards he intended to take nude pictures of him in an attempt to appease Dahmer. Edwards unbuttoned his shirt, saying he would allow him to do so if he would remove the handcuffs and put the knife away. In response to his promise, Dahmer simply turned his attention towards the TV. Edwards observed Dahmer rocking back and forth and chanting before turning his attention back to him. He placed his head on Edwards' chest, listened to his heartbeat, and with the knife pressed against his intended victim. He then informed Edwards he intended to eat his heart. Inside the living room, Edwards waited until he observed Dahmer had momentarily lapsed of concentration before requesting to use the bathroom again. When Edwards rose from the couch, he noted Dahmer was not holding the handcuffs, whereupon Edwards punched him in the face, knocking Dahmer off balance and ran out the front door. At 11:30 p.m. on July 22nd, Edwards flagged down two Milwaukee police officers, Robert Ruth and Ralph Mueller, at the corner of North 25th Street. The officers noted Edwards had a handcuff attached to his wrist, whereupon he explained to the officers that a freak had placed the handcuffs upon him and asked if the police could remove them. When the officers' handcuffs keys failed to fit the brand of handcuffs, Edwards agreed to accompany the officers to the apartment where Edwards stated he had spent the previous 5 hours before escaping. When the officers and Edwards arrived at apartment 213, Jeffrey invited the trio inside and acknowledged he had placed the handcuffs upon Edwards, although he had offered no explanation as to why he had done so. At this point, Edwards divulged to the officers that Dahmer had also brandished a large knife upon him, and that this had happened in the bedroom. Dahmer saw that Miller was holding several of his Polaroids. He fought with the officers in an effort to resist arrest. The officers quickly overpowered him, cuffed his hands behind his back, and called a second squad car for backup. At this point, Miller opened a refrigerator to reveal the freshly severed head of a black male on the bottom shelf. A more detailed search of the apartment conducted by the Milwaukee Police Criminal Investigation Bureau revealed a total of 4 severed heads in Dahmer's kitchen. A total of 7 skulls, some painted, some bleached, were found in Dahmer's bedroom and inside a closet. Investigators discovered collected blood drippings upon a tray at the bottom of Dahmer's refrigerator, plus 2 human hearts and a portion of arm muscle, each wrapped inside plastic bags upon the shelves. In Dahmer's freezer, investigators discovered an entire torso, plus a bag of human organs and flesh stuck to the ice at the bottom. Beginning in the early hours of July 23rd, 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer was questioned by Detective Patrick Kennedy as to the murders he had committed and the evidence found in his apartment. Over the following 2 weeks, Kennedy and later Detective Dennis Murphy conducted numerous interviews with Dahmer. On July 25th, 1991, Jeffrey Dahmer was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. By August 22nd, he had been charged with a further 11 murders committed in Wisconsin and was charged by authorities in Ohio with Hicks murder. The trial lasted 2 weeks. On February the 14th, both attorneys delivered their closing arguments to the jury. On February the 15th, the court reconvened to hear the verdict. Dahmer was ruled to be sane and not suffering from a mental disorder at the time of each of the 15 murders for which he was tried. Jeffrey Dahmer was then sentenced to life imprisonment. Upon hearing of Dahmer's sentencing, his father, Lionel, and stepmother, Sherry, requested to be allowed a 10-minute private meeting with their son. This request was granted, and the trio exchanged hugs and well wishes before Dahmer was escorted away. Jeffrey Dahmer was discovered on the floor of the bathrooms of the gym, suffering from extreme head wounds, had been severely bludgeoned about the head and face with a 20-inch metal bar. His head had also been repeatedly struck against the wall in the assault. Although Dahmer was still alive and was rushed to a nearby hospital, he was pronounced dead 1 hour later. Anton Scarver, who was serving a life sentence for the murder committed in 1990, informed authorities he had first attacked Dahmer with a metal bar as Dahmer was cleaning a staff locker room before attacking Anson as Anson cleaned an inmate locker room. According to Scarver, Dahmer did not yell or make any noise as he was attacked. Our thoughts go out to everyone affected then and now by the Jeffrey Dahmer case. Thank you for watching. Good night and goodbye.